In today's video, we're going to look into limerence. Now, you might never have heard of limerence before, but once I explain what it is, you'll almost certainly know someone who has experienced it, even if you haven't yourself. And to be honest, the chances are you probably will have. Now, we're also going to think about where it comes from and how we can move on from limerence towards healthier, happier relationships. And speaking of healthier relationships, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the great videos that we've got coming up. Let's start with what limerence actually is. Limerence is a state of mind that feels a lot like love, but it's actually closer to infatuation or obsession. If you're experiencing limerence, you're going to be thinking about the other person constantly. You'll always be wanting to be closer to them, or to hear them tell you that they love you, or anything. But you might also just be too shy or anxious to be honest with them about your feelings. Limerence is a lot like having a crush on someone. They become the sole focus of your thoughts, and your mood fluctuates wildly depending on whether they smile at you or whether they ignore you. Now, yes, it's a little bit like a crush, but it really is turned all the way up to 11. It is unbelievably intense, and it can start to get in the way of your everyday life. So what are the main signs of limerence? The first sign of limerence is that you have intrusive thoughts about the other person. Now, this isn't just, oh, I daydream about him a lot. Thinking about them becomes almost like an addiction. It gets in the way of your work, it gets in the way of your social life, and even your ability to think things through rationally. You might literally be unable to sleep or eat because thoughts about them are intruding constantly. The second sign of limerence is that you struggle to concentrate on other real problems. Now, we all have things we need to do or problems we really have to solve. But when you're in limerence, these things just don't seem important. You don't care. This makes it even harder for you to carry on with having a normal, healthy life. Now, the third clue that you might be in limerence rather than being in love is that you can't see any flaws in the other person. None at all. Now, we've all experienced having slightly rose-tinted glasses when we're falling in love with someone. It can lead to some pretty bad decisions. But limerence takes that to a whole new level as well. When you're in limerence, the person that you're infatuated with, they can't do any wrong in your mind. They are simply the most perfect person ever to walk the face of the planet. Now, you might know logically that this is unlikely to be the case, but your intense feelings won't let you actually recognize any of their faults or take any of those faults seriously. Now, when you're in limerence, you will also often feel an incredible amount of anxiety and insecurity. Now, having a crush or being in love, it should feel more exciting and thrilling than anxious. Limerence is terrifying. It leaves you feeling a little bit like, you want to throw up, or that level of anxiety. You might also start to believe that you literally cannot live without the other person. This is really worrying, especially if you're still too afraid of rejection to actually approach them and tell them how you feel. Obviously, when we're at our most rational, we know that we can live without someone we love. We know we can live without anyone if we have to. We know that our feelings might fade and that we can have a fulfilling, meaningful life outside of our romantic attachments. And we know that we will almost certainly find someone else who will love us back if this relationship fails. When we're in limerence, however, there is no way that we can make ourselves believe that. It's just so intense. Now, limerence normally follows 3 stages in order. So the first stage is infatuation. When we're in the infatuation stage, in the early stages of our infatuation, we focus on the other person and think about them constantly. We imagine what they might like or dislike, even if we have no information to imagine that from, and we fantasize about them. The second stage is what we call crystallization. This is where we transition from an infatuation into full limerence. We create a mental image of the other person as perfect, and we ignore or minimize any flaws that they might have. We also start to feel as if every problem in our life would be fixed and our lives would be perfect if only we could be in a relationship with them. Finally, if we don't form a relationship with the other person, we go through what's called disintegration. So in our minds, we've integrated ourselves with them, and now we're separating it. This is where we've realized that we're not going to have a relationship with them, and we start to grieve the relationship that we'd hoped for and imagined, and maybe even at a deep emotional level, we thought we had it. So where does limerence come from? When we're in limerence, all of our thoughts and our focus is on the other person. But deep down, what's going on is actually all about us. Limerence tells us more about how we feel about ourselves than it actually does about how we feel about the other person. Now, if you've been watching these videos for a while, you'll hopefully be familiar with attachment theory. This is the idea that we learn everything about how relationships work and what we can expect from other people at a very early age, from how our parents treat us and how other adults treat us. Limerence is one of the results of learning that you can't trust the people around you to give you unconditional love or to fulfill your emotional needs. Someone with an anxious attachment style has a lot of characteristics in common with someone who is experiencing limerence. They have the same high degree of insecurity and uncertainty and fear of rejection. And that makes it easier for them to move towards limerence. Limerence also appears to have some characteristics in common with addiction, so substance addiction or to alcohol. We know that there is a strong biological and genetic component to addictions, and it's possible that limerence relies on many of those same pathways in the brain, although this hasn't yet been researched particularly thoroughly. Now we understand a little bit more about limerence and why it's such a huge problem and where it might come from. Big question is what we can do about it. Firstly, if you realize that you're experiencing limerence, that's okay. Don't blame yourself or try to shame yourself for your feelings. Yes, it's going to take some effort to find your way back to a more stable and proportionate set of feelings, but you can do it. There's no need to despair. Secondly, give yourself some space apart from the person that you're infatuated with. I know, that is the last thing you want to do when you're in the middle of limerence, but it's important. Being with the person you're obsessing over is like being in the perfume section of one of the big department stores. You're overwhelmed by this scent and by this experience of being around them. And it's not until you get out into the clean air and you breathe again that you realize how overwhelming it was. You should also make sure that you focus on keeping your own life healthy and happy. This means making sure that you still eat well, get plenty of sleep, and keep up with your hobbies and activities. This helps provide a sense of grounding. You have a real, concrete life with things that make you happy and things you need to do. These provide an antidote to some of the pull that you'll feel from the person that you're obsessing over. Next, try to see them as a whole person. Remind yourself that acknowledging their flaws doesn't mean you don't care for them or that you're criticizing them. Instead, you're trying to take them down off of the pedestal that you've put them on and see them for who they really are. If anything, this is the most respectful and caring thing that you can do. Lots of us think that we'd love to have a partner who sees us as perfect or as if we're a superhero, but it's actually exhausting. We're much happier when our partner is able to see and love us for who we are, all of who we are, flaws and all. Now, mindfulness meditation and journaling can help you to put your feelings into perspective. As I've been saying throughout this video, limerence has no perspective. It's the complete opposite of keeping things in proportion. The act of writing down your thoughts and paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations is one way to help you get that sense of proportion back. Finally, focus on learning to take things slowly and allow trust to build naturally in all of your relationships. Depending on the severity of your limerence, it might be possible for you to transition from limerence to love, but you will need to regain a stronger sense of yourself and your needs and your boundaries. If you can learn to allow relationships to build slowly and allow people to earn your trust, you might be able to avoid limerence in the future. If you can start to see the current object of your affections clearly and without bias, you might be able to have a successful relationship with them. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video and learning about limerence. How does it relate to your own experiences? Had you heard of limerence before? If not, do you recognize the signs now that you know that it has a specific name? Or have you ever been the object of somebody else's limerence? If so, how did that feel? Let me know in the comments. And as always, please do like and subscribe if you found this helpful. We have loads more content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. All right, I'll speak to you soon.